Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you here. My name is Kelly Baum. I'm the John and Mary Papajohn Director of the Des Moines Art Center. Bring the world to Iowa and Iowa to the world. This directive is the second pillar of the Art Center's new 5-year strategic plan. Bring the world to Iowa and Iowa to the world. That directive might also have read, celebrate the world that already exists here in Iowa. We have assembled at the Art Center today to do just that, to celebrate the rich vein of Haitian art and culture that has long lived in the state of Iowa. When it comes to the study of Haitian art and culture, the Art Center is a newcomer. For the purposes of this work, we are mostly host, facilitator, and student. Our colleagues at the Waterloo Center for the Arts, Grinnell College, and Drake University have been collecting, studying, and preserving Haitian art and culture for many, many years. On the part of the Art Center, I'm thrilled to have had the chance to collaborate with them over the last year and a half on a project that feels even more vital and important today than it did when we launched in early 2024. I want to thank Jill Featherstone, Senior Director of Museum Learning, Engagement, and Community Access, for coordinating today's symposium. Coordinating is a very simple word, but it actually means a lot of work, care, and labor on Jill's part to make all of this possible today. I'm very grateful to Associate Curator Beth Golnick and Waterloo Center for the Arts Executive Director Chawne Paige for having co-organized the accompanying exhibition on Haitian art. Thank you for sharing your collection with the Des Moines Art Center. Beth and Chawne were assisted by colleagues in both Des Moines and Waterloo, especially Elizabeth Andrews, who is Registrar and Associate Curator. I'm grateful to the students in Grinnell College's Haitian Art and Visual Culture Seminar for creating digital story maps featuring the works in the exhibition. Many thanks are also due to Dr. Inbal Mazar, Associate Professor of World Languages and Cultures at Drake University and a volunteer with Des Moines Refugee Support, for facilitating a very special addition to the exhibition called Haitian Family Portraits, Home in Iowa. This project features images and stories of local families, all of them immigrants from Haiti, living in central Iowa, now on view outside the exhibition in Blank Gallery. I hope that you'll spend time with this project, and many thanks to photographer Brittany Burke-Crow for having taken such beautiful and sensitive photographs. The exhibition's primary donor, EMC Insurance. Thank you. EMC's mission and commitment is to improve lives. EMC Insurance uplifts the communities where their team members live and work by combining philanthropy, volunteerism, and workplace giving. The Art Center is very lucky to have not just the support of individuals and families and foundations, but also many local businesses and corporations in the area. So special thanks to EMC Insurance for stepping up. Additional thanks are due to ArtBridge's Access for All for helping make possible free admission. We are one of only 1/3 of museums in the country to offer free admission to our galleries and programs. ArtBridge's Access for All also enables extended hours and educational programs. Special thanks to Principal Foundation for also supporting free admission and extended hours. And finally, I want to acknowledge the Anna K. Meredith Trust, which provides legacy support to the Art Center's exhibitions and operations. So finally, and most importantly, I want to acknowledge and thank our speakers, all of whom have dedicated many years to the study, care, and stewardship of Haitian art and culture. They are our guests of honor today. The first is Chawne Paige, Executive Director, Waterloo Center for the Arts. Fredo Rivera, Dr. Fredo Rivera, Assistant Professor of Art History, Grinnell College. I met Fredo, I think, at my very first exhibition opening at the Art Center, and I felt a kindred spirit right away. So I'm so glad that you're here today. Dr. Petrushka Moines, who is Assistant Professor and Cultural and Community-Based Digital curator, Grinnell College Libraries, and Dr. Inbal Mazar, Associate Professor of Spanish at Drake University. This is a true collaboration, a thrilling collaboration, multi-institution, intrastate, all of this energy and love and care focused on Haitian art and culture. I can't think of a more perfect program for today. So a quick word on the run of show before we get started. Chawne is up first. We will then take a short break with refreshments in the lobby. At 2:30, we'll reconvene for Dr. Rivera's presentation and then our two remaining speakers. And finally, we will have a chance afterwards to enjoy the exhibition in the galleries as well as a special digital project. Chawne, I'm very honored to welcome you to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly, for that wonderful introduction. And, I just want to take the opportunity to kind of thank the Des Moines Art Center for basically reaching out to the different parts of Iowa and kind of, having the opportunity to be able to partner with a kind of a beacon of fine arts within the state. I know the Des Moines Art Center's reach is extremely far. And I know as institution to institution, there is so much to learn from, reaching out and partnering with other institutions. It's almost kind of like a true collaboration and kind of like a work in progress or like kind of professional development in a lot of ways from institution to institution, because there's so much to learn. And so this is a great opportunity for us to, my passion in sharing the Waterloo Center for the Arts collection with Iowa, but we wouldn't be here without the efforts of Laura, as well as Elizabeth, Golnick. The early conversations with this, before this project had started out, actually kind of links back to Mia Loffer, who ended up organizing a gathering of curators across the state. And it kind of just stemmed from like, well, how can museums help with each other? And this opportunity of potentially kind of bringing in guest curators and things. And so this opportunity to kind of bring the Waterloo Center for the Arts collection to Des Moines started out of basically what would be like a kind of a coffee conversation over Zoom, which it's a very, very exciting kind of moment. I also want to, even though you have kind of thanked several of the people, I kind of just want to reiterate of thanking Elizabeth Andrews as well as Daryl Taylor. Those are our two curators at the Waterloo Center for the Arts that kind of helped kind of package everything and bring everything down here. And of course, partner in crime, Patricia Moines. And as I get into my presentation, you'll see kind of like how she comes into the Waterloo Center for the Arts story, and how she kind of landed in Iowa. And we've kind of embraced her with open arms and proud of her. And Fredo Rivera, who's had various different intersections with the Art Center before I even knew him, and with the project that, the grant that he wrote to bring in the Haitian Digital Crossroads project, which is kind of an amazing opportunity. And I'm honored to kind of be sharing the symposium with them and finally meeting Inbal with her work that she's been doing with the Haitian community here in here in Des Moines, which is a great kind of thing that I will anyway, not to trip over words. At the same time, I want to thank my wife and boys that are not actually here today. Being a parent and being a gallery director of young kids, in order for me to be here, childcare and everything has to happen. But they are my world. They are the other passion that I have aside from the arts and aside from Haitian art. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get into my presentation and just talking about Waterloo. So one of the things that really needs to set the stage about Waterloo is that, Waterloo is one of the largest per capita Black populations in the state. And, in the 1960s, the Waterloo Center for the Arts had already been doing art programs in the park. We had just moved in our building that we currently are in now in 1966. So prior to that, the Art Center has this huge history of going out into the parks and connecting people with the arts since 1929. but we didn't have a building. And we were also the Waterloo Recreation and Arts. We weren't really a fully fledged kind of museum. We had great community members that helped establish our collection. The Waterloo Junior League ended up giving us our first piece in our collection in 1961, which was a Marvin Cone, which was great. But then, shortly after we kind of moved into our building, we were right in the wake of desegregation, right in the wake of racial unrest in Waterloo. And Waterloo at the time was an extremely segregated community. So much so that with our workforce, with the strikes, with bringing in labor, strike breakers to actually break it, there was lots of riots that happened. And Waterloo was kind of unfortunately in the news in the 1960s. And the Waterloo Center for the Arts, Waterloo Recreation Arts at the time, started a program called Cultural Acts. Cultural Acts was a program to bring different parts of the community together to the Art Center to engage in an experience of learning about different cultures. And so this is the 1960s, and this is, different people, different kids being in a space, learning about another culture, and ultimately learning about the uniqueness and or the connectedness that we have with our differences. This is a very, very kind of amazing project. This became what is now the Phelps Youth Pavilion. It became the Junior Art Gallery. That is something that we're very proud of today, which opened in 2008. I'll kind of get into some of that, but the context is very important for you to understand. The Art Center was at the middle of bringing together the different communities together in partnership with Waterloo Community Schools. And then there was this doctor and his wife that traveled to Haiti. Dr. F. Harold Ruling and his wife ended up going to Haiti just on vacation. Pretty much, and I would say this is probably a similar story to the Figge, the Davenport Museum as well. Dr. Weissminger, is that if I'm right? Nice Walker. Both the two doctors, two community members that just saw an opportunity to travel in Haiti, fell in love with the artwork, fell in love with Haiti, fell in love with Haitians, and it was just very much just, well, hey, we're going to collect those pieces of artwork. It wasn't necessarily that they had a destination in mind of where they were going to get it. It was just a true passion of embracing this particular culture and bringing it back to Waterloo. Our collection started in 1977, in the wake of all of this racial unrest, and because of the types of programming that we had, it was an attempt. I mean, today in 2025, there are words that we can say that they were trying to be responsive and trying to provide representation within collections so that the student body that was coming into the gallery, who were Black, could actually see Black people on the walls. Regardless of the intention there, I think it really worked. It really helped us in a way that it helped augment our programming. But the thing is, this artwork came in. The original gift was only 7 pieces. And so we didn't know anything about this work. And then we reached out to Uda Stibich, as well as Marilyn Holberg, to kind of help expand what our knowledge was, to connect with scholars, to help kind of expand how we can interpret this work. She ended up introducing us to Caribbean art and expanded our collection in '84, but ultimately she arranged for trips for our staff, our educational staff, our curatorial staff, and leadership to go to Haiti to buy Haitian art. Well, I wouldn't say buy Haitian artwork, but to actually learn from Haitians, to learn in Haiti, to kind of bring that back to Waterloo so that we can actually be good stewards of talking about Haitian artwork in our galleries, and of which our collection still started to grow. I want to say in the first 20 years, we went from about 7 pieces all the way up to about 104 pieces. And something that's really important to know is we still just presented Haitian artwork as this kind of wide kind of survey of Haitian artwork. We didn't really start talking about different themes. We didn't know about particular themes. But as soon as we got a certain amount, we started packaging exhibits to send all over the state. We started partnering with the Figge and did a number of joint exhibits in the 1980s and into the 90s. And during that work, we started getting exposed to other collectors and other artists, and started realizing that there were holes in the work in our collection. And so we were still talking with the Rulings. We still had a relationship with the Rulings, and they were still donating works to the museum. And you would say, was there an influence between our staff and what they were purchasing? Was there a particular relationship there? Well, yes. We started talking with the Rulings, and in our own trips, in our own research, we started to realize there were gaps in the works that we had, and there were certain stories that we wanted to be able to illustrate. And by this point, we had enough pieces that we were able to talk about Haiti with their work. Because at no point was the staff Haitian, fully knowledgeable. We were always kind of a work in progress and trying to gain our knowledge and gain how much we can actually talk about Haitian artwork. It's still something that we're doing today. I'm not an expert, even though I've been working with Haitian artwork for 20 years. I still feel like there's so much that I'm still trying to learn, and I'm constantly kind of going out to learn about that. And what I'm going to say here is, like, this is the first piece that came into the collection. And it's just chickens, innocuous, right? It's just a rooster and a couple chickens. And the thing is, it's like, in trying to decode Haitian paintings, we didn't know early on that this was a particular painting was a reference to Legba. Legba is one of the loa, or spirits, within Haitian voodoo that you have to appease first before you can gain access to any of the spirit world. We did not know that. Just by chance, the first piece coming in the collection was kind of, in a way, an offering of Legba. It's kind of opening up the gates, so to speak. At the same time, in the same painting, there's a tree trunk that's there. And oftentimes trees within a voodoo temple, or I should say the post in the middle of a temple, would be the potomitan, would be the center of the temple. It would be where offerings and part of the ceremony kind of wrapped around, and this is also in this painting. But, in Iowa, and bringing this collection into the Waterloo Center for the Arts, and a hub that makes tractors and is still kind of urban and have cornfields and soybeans, like, well, maybe this is just, farm life. And right beside our Grant Woods collection, this is where this kind of sits. But it really, I really have to give it to my predecessors before I actually even started working at the Art Center. So our collection started in 1977. I was born in 1977. So, I didn't even know anything about this. And so in a lot of ways, the work that my predecessors have done, Kent Schenkel, Cami Scully, and Clarence Alling, they were the ones that were really championing, hey, we need to learn more. We needed to connect the dots. We need to reach out to these scholars and bring this knowledge to the Art Center so that we can be able to be good stewards of this collection. And so there were lots of collaborations. There were lots of exhibits that kind of traveled everywhere, but we didn't necessarily know. So this is just a collection of some of the books. I want to say almost, at least well over half of these books, has pieces that eventually ended up at the Waterloo Center for the Arts collection that was printed in those. And so this is a wide variety of different books from different scholars that we've connected with, as well as one in particular, this purple one that's on the bottom, is LaGrace Benson. I had the honor of kind of like meeting her and talking with her, and she really kind of helped me start to realize, as a graphic designer at the time, so when I started working at the Art Center in 2001, I was a graphic designer. And I ended up meeting LaGrace, and she was just like, I just really had like this knack for like kind of decoding visual information. And I loved graphic design, and I loved the Veves, but I also wanted to know, like, well, what's going on with these paintings? I was trained as a Western studio artist and had a certain amount of aesthetics and didn't really understand the Haitian aesthetic whatsoever. And I was kind of like dismissive. But the thing is, I implore you, all of you, to go and spend time in the gallery that's upstairs. Come to the Waterloo Center for the Arts and spend time in our gallery. There is so much that exists in Haitian artwork. There's so much elaborate, wonderful stories that unfold of a very, very, very proud and powerful people. And And sometimes it's just sitting there beautifully in silence. This is just a seated woman, but I argue that this is Urzuli Frida, another Loa in the Haitian pantheon of voodoo. Or is it just a portrait? So as we started to kind of expand our knowledge of Haitian artwork, we started to really start to shift, or needed to get into talking about Haitian voodoo and talking about things beyond just the materiality. This presentation for the symposium is just trying to get through just the history of the Waterloo Center for the Arts and how we started to grow to the collection size that we have. And And so when we started kind of really looking at some of the paintings that started coming into the collection, they weren't just about the landscapes. They weren't just about portraits. We started to really see very, very, very kind of elaborate themes start to unravel. So let's just kind of fast forward to about 2008. Our collection had almost got to about 1,500 pieces by that time. And now we were able to really lean in on the collection to start telling the stories of Haiti with their paintings and not just trying to regurgitate history and things that are kind of passed down to us as if it's some history that I lived or our curatorial team has lived. This is not knowledge these are things that we're learning from the paintings, and we are trying to be good stewards about talking about Haiti in the context of the paintings that we have. A lot of the effort of connecting with the scholars also kind of leaned with thinking about or following the traces of the different families that have given artwork to our collection, and really looking at what those stories were, what type of relationship the doctors and the different collectors that came to the Waterloo Center for Arts, or as I say, gave artwork to the collection, what those connections to Haiti were, and try to unfold those connections, try to talk about those. But more specifically, we also were tired of kind of talking about Haitian artwork just from this kind of broad strokes of, well, here are paintings, here are carvings, here are the drapeaus, here are the medals, here are devotional objects. Any other art form, any other kind of museum or within Americas and European interests would be talking about the individual artists and their stories and their background and their history, and talking about the canon of their individual works and what types of themes would be directly connected to those individual artists. That was not something that we were doing early on. It was something that once we started to accumulate enough pieces and started to see themes within having enough of the previous medal, Marat Briere medals, to actually see his relationship between the artists that he influenced that came underneath him, that worked in his studio, to seeing the influence that Georges Liautaud ended up having on that particular artist as well. I mean, there were things that we started to kind of realize that there were more stories that needed to be told about the individual artists and not just kind of the generalizations of it. And so since we started to dig into artists, we didn't have within our collection all of the kind of early masters that kind of got recognized on an international field. And the Dr. F.L. Ruling and his wife, their children, even today, those that are living, have set up funds to actually kind of help our collection, to help still grow our Haitian collection, and to help us with research. They also, Anne Enderling, ended up kind of gifting this piece one of the years that we hosted the Haitian Art Society conference in Waterloo. So we, in 2008, right on the cusp of us opening and expanding the Waterloo Center for the Arts, we expanded and opened our Phelps Youth Pavilion. We also established a dedicated Haitian art gallery in the name of Janet Feldman. But we changed that name to be the Ruling Feldman Gallery. Janet Feldman was a donor that ended up giving us a very sizable gift of Haitian as well as Mexican folk art in around 2007. that kind of really helped really tip the scales and kind of tip us over 1,500 pieces within our collection. That conference, we unveiled this piece coming in our collection, which is by the artist Hector Hippolyte, which started to kind of be a part of like the ongoing question about questioning what representation we had in our collection. We knew our collection was large at that time. I would say that at that time, we had probably really got to be in about the largest collection within the United States. Not that this is about bragging rights with the Figgy whatsoever, because at some point, it's not about the size of the collection. There are major, amazing collections all over the United States. And what I mean by that is like there are whole houses and homes and people that are passionate about Haitian artwork, that go there, travel there, have relationships with those artists, and have like adorned their entire house, floor to ceiling, with all of these various different paintings. In 2003, the Haitian Art Society kind of got started and got cooked up in one of these collectors' kitchens with Cammie Scully, Kent Schenkel, and Larry Kent, and a whole bunch of other kind of names of Haitian art collectors. And they were just like, hey, wouldn't it be great for every year for us to kind of travel to see other collections that would be in Washington, D.C., down in New Jersey, or New Orleans, as well as out in California, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, Waterloo Center for Art staff in tow, we ended up kind of jet setting around the nation to kind of connect with these different scholars, but more specifically to kind of see more Haitian artwork, to start to see works by these individual artists, to kind of be able to tell more of their story. And as that happened, we started to have these relationships with different scholars and different artists. And so those donations still kind of started to kind of come in. Which is exciting, but then, 2013 is when I became the curator for the Waterloo Center for the Arts, and this is the first show that the first artist that I curated, that was Emmanuel Maurissier. I ended up driving out to New Jersey, going to the studio, and selected about 38 pieces to kind of come to Waterloo. They were all unstretched, and I had to kind of get them stretched within like a week period before I can present them at the Waterloo Center for the Arts. But Emmanuel was an artist that was born in Port-au-Prince, immigrated to the United States, and had an amazing kind of body of work to begin with. And he definitely kind of had Haitian themes that were in there, but he had influences from European masters and other European artists and other Haitian artists that kind of came into his work. And I would say at that time, and at this time, as a curator for this collection, I was still very, 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 very naive. Like, so now we're at the point in this story and this presentation where it's like I start to kind of come into my own and kind of grapple with, being a Black man in America and talking about a whole nother culture, more specifically Haiti, and trying to think about like, well, what is it that I do know about this? And reflecting back on like kind of some of the early conversations that were happening at the Waterloo Center for the Arts about having this work represented in her collection, like what stories could be gleaned from this and what things could be learned. And it was something that, as a trained artist, I was just loving what I was seeing. I was loving the symbolism and the work and the narratives that were so-called coming about. But it wasn't until I ended up going to Haiti. We ended up going to Haiti in 2014 after the 2010 earthquake, with the intent to go to connect with artists, to also purchase artwork, but to also kind of see how artists were responding to the earthquake and what type of voice was going to come out in the artwork that was being produced in 2014. No longer this kind of quest to fill in the gaps per se, but really see what contemporary artists were producing and what they were saying at that time. And for me, it's still very new to like being like the sorter of the gallery and presenting this particular artwork and trying to be good by what is being said. I had a lot to learn. I had a lot to pick up and a lot to think about. And in being in Haiti, I was extremely overwhelmed. But one of the things that really stuck with me was, while we were out there collecting all this particular work, was there was a story that was in Haiti that I needed to embrace myself, being an American. And it was really trying to put into perspective what the transatlantic slave trade was. And being a descendant of an enslaved people here in the United States, it's sad that I had to go to Haiti to really see the true barbarity of what the transatlantic slave trade resulted in and how that influenced me. It's sad that I had to go to another country to learn about really what I experienced as a child through our educational system that was very watered down, very sanitized, very stripped back, maybe a 2-day unit on civil rights and slavery. To actually go and see a history museum in downtown Port-au-Prince that talked about the relationship of the Taino, the indigenous people that were in Hispaniola, and the original enslaved peoples that was there, and then all of the Africans, and how hard labor was, and what that relationship was. It hit me so hard because it was just like, well, wait a minute, this story needs to be shared with Waterloo and Iowa and the United States. And anyone that really wants to like talk about kind of like national history and national identity is like, here's a people that has created this alchemy of this ancestry, regardless if they are trying to talk about the story, embrace that story, take it on its own, or it's just something that's ingrained from generation to generation that's coming through their work that is just so passionate and so powerful. And it's like, well, wait a minute, that's wow. And so that changed me as like someone to kind of talk about Haitian artwork and be a part of various different projects. I'm honored to be able to, hey, Des Moines Art Center, you want to have our Haitian artwork? Yeah, sure. Spencer, Iowa, you want to, Arts on Grand, you want to have our artwork? Yeah, sure. Oh, MTSU, Middle State Tennessee University, you want to have our artwork? Yeah. I want to show it because these stories have to be shared. And the work that's coming out of Haiti is just amazing, and it's at so many different generations. This is in the Grand Rue, and all of the artwork that's on the wall is artists that are coming up in an atelier and in the wake of the Renaissance artists that are at this time that were alive, that were influenced and helping them teach of how to kind of have their voice in their work. And be very unapologetic about their spirituality, about their identity, and like, you know, their introduction to tools is like, this is some of this work is like better than like some of the stuff that I've experienced in art schools here in America. But that's me being a little bit over the top. So Haiti is smaller than Iowa. It has like 11.4 million people. You know, in my visit there was just like so many people, such a density, and there's such a beauty, and such a, like if you ever get the experience and can go there when things settle down, I do recommend it. But, you know, now with all that being said, the conversations that I'm starting to want to have with Haitian artwork and want to kind of pass on as knowledge to the up-and-coming curators that's at the museum and the public is to kind of be able to kind of start to look at artwork and open eyes and like really start to see like where these connections are in artwork that comes into museums and how it connects to people and connects to different types of narratives. And sometimes there's stories that are like stories that we've already talked about. Like and I'm pretty sure, regardless of what your spiritual affiliation is like there are the stories of Noah that kind of gathered all the animals 2 by 2 and brought them on the boat and kind of saved from, you know, global catastrophe to save the world. And but like that story, we definitely always hear about the loading of all of the animals, and we never hear about the kind of disembarkment of those animals. And here in this painting by Andre Normil, I would say there's the definite conversation about the unloading of the Loa, the unloading of the African spirits that kind of came with the Haitians and all of the enslaved peoples to the Americas. And with them, their traditions and their ideas. And it's something that, well, yes, we can celebrate in talking about Abrahamic faiths and these kind of Old Testament kind of narratives. But in plain sight, this is a celebration of identity. This is a celebration of spirituality. And in a way, a kind of an embrace of Haitian voodoo as well. Not that this is going to be a presentation all about Haitian food. There's a gallery guide and there's other information in the gallery that you can kind of read in to get into some of the symbolism. But this is something that I have like started to now, with the amount of pieces that we have in the collection, starting to make connections between all of the different objects we have and how those narratives kind of play out. These are stories that are not necessarily written down, but are embedded in the people and embedded in Haiti. And, these two artists aren't even living in the same generation. Costero Bazil, the painting that's on the right, passed away when he was I think 30, back in the 1960s. And this is Thermidor Davison is an artist that studied under Lionel Salnois, who's a tin artist, who we purchased this work in 2014 when we went down to buy pieces that were what are pieces that would have been created for the Voodoo Temple? And these are splitting images of the same Loa in a reference to each other in a lot of ways. Or is it just a Christian image? It's just a question. But at the same time, we start to decode the colors. We're starting to kind of look at what the relationships are, the purple and white, and how that plays out to, well, yeah, these are just two people that are kind of dancing out, jumping through. Or are these Papa Guede or Baron Samedi and Maman Brigitte? These are two Loas, male and female Loas of the dead and ancestors that are walking through a painting. And yes, most of the colors that's in that painting is purple, and there's white. And it's something that easily we could just kind of get lost in just the symbols of the painting itself. But then when we start to kind of with the objects, this is the work that the Waterloo Center for the Arts is doing. And ultimately what I'm leaning into or getting to is the work that Patricia Moines is assisting us with doing, is being able to kind of expand what our knowledge is about the individual paintings, to be able to tell these stories a lot more rich, to create a richer story and a more in-depth explanation to be able to be shared. Because so much of this knowledge is word of mouth, just like me telling you, and it's not completely written down. There are sources where some of this is written down, but some of those sources are written from a perspective that's, much like myself, very observant. Kind of from the periphery and not necessarily from a lived experience, so to speak. But yet, we still get collections, we still get works donated to the museum. So this is a collection of close to about 102, 117, Elizabeth, it was about 117 flags that kind of came to the museum that come from everywhere. They come in FedEx, or they'll be someone will call us up and it's hey, can you drive out and pick up this work? Or it gets sent to us in suitcases from DHL. And so this is Ted Frankel, who used to run Uncle Fun's store in Chicago. He now has a store that's opened up at the Visionary Museum. Thank you, Elizabeth. The Visionary Museum in Baltimore. And this is this is actually the Constant flag that's upstairs right now. But in our museum, we have about 11 galleries that will always have Haitian artwork on display in some capacity. And so we try to definitely kind of showcase our collection, but at the same time, we're also looking for opportunities to tell stories of artists that are producing artwork now as well. And so this was an opportunity that came up in 2017, where we brought in Pascale Monin, who was an artist that lived in Haiti, and brought her work to Waterloo, and did a pretty large-scale installation. This on the floor is about 500 pounds of rice that got put in the middle of the gallery. This was organized a part of another Haitian Art Society conference that we hosted in Waterloo, where patrons visited Iowa, and ended up traversing the highways and byways to go up to Milwaukee, which is another repository of Haitian artwork, over to the Figge, over to Chicago, and then, anyway, it was a full Midwest tour of Haitian artwork. And then we got to go into various different homes of different constituents within the state that also still collect Haitian artwork. So there's always this kind of rich kind of sharing of all of this kind of bounty of this particular culture, which we're super excited about. But our team is only 2 people, and now I'm director. So it's like I try to do research, but like every institution is going to be strapped with how to be good stewards of all the works that are in a particular collection. And so to date, like the Waterloo Center has probably over 2,000 objects of Haitian artwork in our collection. But we have about 9,000 objects total, and that kind of spans so many different categories. And with only a team of 2, having all of this stuff that we're doing, we didn't realize that Fredo was in the wings kind of writing for a grant to kind of figure out like, well, hey, is there a way that we can kind of like bring up hidden collections and like kind of bring those into the spotlight? And part of that was also bringing on Patricia Moines to spearhead the Haitian Digital Crossroads Project to create a database, which I'm not going to get into your presentation because you're going to talk about it. But we're honored that our collection was a part of the pilot for that project. And in order to kind of make our collection kind of available to the kind of larger audiences, and more specifically the world. And so part of that work, and part of the pandemic kind of experience, while everybody was closing up, we started pulling everything out of our collection, out of the vaults, and kind of bringing them into our different spaces throughout the museum. And so this is just one slide. I don't want to go through like all of the slides of all of the images, of all of the artwork that we brought up, to be able to digitize all of the work. And so this is in our kind of one of our auditoriums that we have at the Waterloo Center of the Arts. And this is just a display of all of the Haitian medals, and just a portion of it, because it's just one photo view. Which it was a great opportunity. Like I said, I don't want to get into Patricia's thing so much, but I also want to kind of pivot, because I'm going to kind of wrap up here. In Iowa now, we have a volume of Haitian families that have moved to Iowa. Here in Des Moines, as Imbal has in her portraits of the Haitian community that's here in Des Moines. There's a large population of Haitians that live over in Cedar Rapids and also in Waterloo. And this is kind of like one of the moments where within our collection and having this work, we've always been presenting to an audience that are unfamiliar with Haiti. And our starting point is always like, how do we unpack Haiti as a culture, as an idea? And yet alone, as an art museum, talk about the artwork and talk about all of the things that are in the paintings. It's like it's a tall order. But now we're at this like kind of very hardcore point within our evolution where we need to be responsive to the community, the makeup of our community. And now we have Haitians that come into our museum as well as this museum as well. That, I heard from one of the guards today as I walked into the gallery, and she just kind of quietly was like, hey, here you're from Waterloo. I don't know if you knew this or not, but we had a gentleman that was in the Des Moines Art Center recently who was Haitian that had no idea that this collection was here. Not only that, it was just like, oh, well, we're looking at the works on the wall, and it's also in Creole. Like, whoa. These are next steps, I would say. I mean, next steps of many, because there's so much that it comes to like, how do we introduce this? And more specifically, how do we champion the voices of this particular community? Because it's like, yeah, we are the stewards of this work, but it's like they have the agency and the voice of what are those narratives. And just another experience that I experienced in working with our Haitian community, we were organizing a very powerful event last year called Haitian Flag Day. And it was an opportunity to celebrate the creation of the Haitian flag and in a way Haiti's independence, and it's something that we couldn't do this year. But that's probably a different presentation at this moment. But one of the things I will say is the Haitian community, when we were working with the Haitian community, they did not know that we had the Haitian collection. Because it was one of the things we wanted to meet the Haitians exactly where they were, to be able to be assist and be able to be a facilitator to help them celebrate their culture. And it wasn't about our ego and about our works. It's not even about that. But then after this event had kind of like happened, and I kind of were having a wrap-up meeting, I brought one of the singers that sung the Haitian national anthem, and another woman from Faye Bean from Cedar Rapids. They were walking through the gallery, and I just hear all of this singing. And they were singing one of the medals that we have that just has a angel on it and a little girl that's sitting down on this breadfruit. And they were singing a nursery rhyme that was taught to Haitian children that I had no idea what it was about. And years of looking at this Haitian medal, I just saw it as an angel that's coming to feed a little girl. Nor did I know, and all of this whole other narrative that kind of came from connecting the people with their work. And it's an opportunity for another layer of research that still needs to be done, and really to kind of bring that voice back into the galleries. And some very important kind of next steps that I'm looking forward to. But at the same time, still, they're a proud people. And I would love to welcome the Haitians to Iowa and to Waterloo, and regardless of kind of the current politics that's happening, I'm proud that we now actually do have Haitians, and I want to embrace the Haitian population that is actually coming to Iowa and still want to share, even if it's not in person in the gallery, through the efforts of Patricia Moines and kind of getting the Digital Crossroads project out there, or even just kind of making the collection accessible and kind of expand to go beyond just the Des Moines Art Center and go to other reaches. So other than that, thank you.
And we have a couple of microphones on either side of the auditorium. If anyone would like to ask Chawne a question before we go to break. Chawne, I have a question that came to my mind. I was wondering about the conservation of some of the artworks, and are you doing that kind of thing in-house? Are you using outside consultation? When the pieces are coming to you, it sounded like to me, maybe sometimes you didn't know they were coming to you. They would just arrive.
Yeah. That's a wonderful question, and it's kind of a pretty hard question, to be perfectly honest. I would love to think that our efforts is to, when we do have pieces coming into the collection, the number one goal is to keep them stable and in the current state that they're in. Not deteriorating, not molding, not endangering other pieces that are in the collection. And so though that there is an effort to, if things are bent or if things need to be touched up or reframed or stretched, depending on if it's a canvas, there is an effort to kind of do some restoration on those pieces. But a lot of the things and a lot of the pieces, I'll just kind of a slight segue. Some of the pieces that are even in the gallery that's upstairs, there's a pirabara, it's a seated figure that has a little dagger on it. That particular piece is by an artist that had a stall in the iron market in downtown Port-au-Prince that were making these assemblages, and they were sitting in a plein air market. And they would sit there for season after season, depending on how they would move. And they would be exposed to all of the pollutants, all of the dust, the fact there isn't really any grasses in Haiti because of so much deforestation, that a lot of the earth and the coral and the dirt is just in the air. And a lot of that stuff kind of accumulates on the surface of the actual object itself. And so there's the thought of, do you clean those things off? In some cases, it was up to the donors that bought those pieces that ended up giving it to us. Some of them have painted the pieces, have restored them, have cleaned them, have brushed off all of the accumulation. In some of the cases, there are pieces that came to the collection that were actually used in Haitian voodoo ceremonies, and have a accumulation of offerings, accumulation of debris and things that are on there that, unless it's creating mold, we're not necessarily kind of restoring those pieces. And so it's a kind of a case-by-case basis. But in a lot of cases, here in presenting them in the gallery, they're on a beautiful pedestal. They're on a beautiful white wall. And the context and where some of those pieces were purchased is they were just sitting in a pile of other kind of detritus of an artist's life. That's in their studio, that's on the ground, that's exposed to the earth and sun and rain and everything, and it's still just as beautiful. So I mean, we try to touch them with still the white glove and not go too far. Although there's a recent collection that came to the Waterloo Center of the Arts by a wonderful collector, Ed and Ann Gesson, who also went on our travels to a lot of the Haitian Art Society. He was the previous president for the Haitian Art Society. We ended up driving all the way down to Tampa, to pick up works from that particular collection that had been through a hurricane and had gotten destroyed. And so those pieces need to be be dehumidified and have mold be dealt with. And so there's that conservation work that is done. But for the most part, there's some funds for that, but conservation for it is extremely expensive. So, yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
Chawne, I heard you just say that some of the objects in the collection were used in voodoo. I think I'm back on. Is there so when you accept a work into the collection, do you have to give consideration to the original use and and are there any interdictions or rules around certain objects being on display, being touched, being handled, thinking about
That's great fun. For those of you who didn't kind of hear the question was kind of poised around, objects, devotional objects, and like how they're used, and if there are any kind of steps that the Waterloo Center of the Arts is kind of taking in handling of those pieces and the presentation of those pieces and like kind of how they're presented. And such. And I would say in recent research, we've been trying to be a little bit more sensitive to how certain objects and what context certain objects are being presented. But there's still, it's such a learning curve on, reference it, like really getting a mambo or hogan and to actually talk about the objects and talk about like kind of how, what their uses are is kind of like some of the steps that we've done some of that work. And though we are sensitive to how some of those objects can be presented and or handled, but I think we're still in the early stages of kind of being as respectful as we can. It's not to say that we're trying to be disrespectful, but I think it is something where a lot of the devotional objects that we have within the collection have been desecrated. Like they actually haven't, they are no longer being used in ceremony, and so they're kind of gone through a ceremony to kind of disimbue them, so to speak, before they actually have kind of come to us. There are other pieces that I would say that are probably, I wouldn't necessarily say that we have a full understanding if they really were used in ceremony, because there are artists that part of the work, part of the lore, part of why they're making the pieces. I mean, I would reference some of the artwork that's coming out of the Grand Rue, some of the artwork that Pirabara was making, where they were in the process of making the pieces, they were also kind of making it look like there was an accumulation of offerings on the pieces themselves. And so they have like this patina that's on them that has the lure of like, well, yes, it is a voodoo object, and yes, it was used in ceremony, or is it an aesthetic that's being purchased? Because still, the art market in Haiti, at least in the times that I had been there and been part of there, there's a hard and fast, I wouldn't say no, there's not a hard and fast line between artwork that's being produced for commerce and artwork that is being produced and bought from the market to be used in personal altars and or in temples. Two totally different things. And artists in Haiti is a very prized profession. Like if you can make it as an artist, I mean, that's like a big deal. That's just like, being a firefighter or policeman or whatnot. And it's totally different than, I mean, not to say that there aren't starving artists in Haiti, by no means, but it's a different kind of occupation versus here in the Americas. And so the artwork that's being produced, like if an artwork is sold and sold by a gallerist, this is, oh, well, this particular one that has this particular voodoo theme that's in it did get sold to a collector that's out in London, well, that artist would still probably most likely still kind of go back and remake that piece because it did sell, because of the economy of it. Not to say that there is a kind of a, that there really isn't true artistry and kind of intent behind objects that are being made, but to some degree there is a nod to the art market that is a part of that. And so it's kind of hard to kind of separate sometimes to really know.
All right, I think we're going to take, oh, we see one more question. Yep, go ahead, I'll bring it to you.
Hi, can you speak a little bit about the intersection of East African art and the Llano Indians and how those combine together to make voodoo and that particular religion and how that reflects back over to Africa?
I didn't catch the first part of that.
The intersection of slavery and them stopping in the island of Hispaniola and that combining with the Llano Indians to make voodoo and that whole art form and things.
Yes.
A little bit about.
Well, that's a great question. That's a great question and loaded question, but definitely a very appropriate one. You know, when it comes to, you know, trying to understand Haitian voodoo in particular, and voodoo, Vodun, Iwu, and the Yoruba society and the Fon are East African communities. West African. Sorry, yes, West. Thank you. West African communities that were, in a lot of ways, were populations that had also had an influence of the French and were a destination source of African bodies, African peoples that were enslaved, and then that was like kind of the source for some of the enslaved peoples in the transatlantic slave trade that landed in Haiti. And so in the early days of the French occupation and Spanish occupation, as the enslaved peoples that kind of came to Haiti, they were dying off because of how much work. And so Haiti was one of the richest colonies of Europe because of the sheer amount of sugarcane and coffee that was being produced in Haiti. Like, it was ridiculous. And it was also a ridiculous amount of people that was a part of that workforce. The indigenous people were enslaved first. I said this earlier, where it's like they were enslaved and they were not hardened enough to kind of deal with the labor. And so most of the indigenous people were killed. And so those that did survive fled to the mountains. And with this cycle of enslaved people, I mean, this massive volume of people that were coming to the Americas, several of the people that were captured in Africa were still warriors. They were still very powerful people, and they're still very astute of warfare and how to organize. And they landed in Haiti, and the enslaved peoples outnumbered their French captors. And several of them were able to break away from that experience and hide in the mountains as well. And so the birth of voodoo ended up being this kind of Congress of the Congress of the Crocodiles, this calling of indigenous peoples, the Taino, various different kind of Africans that were marooned in the mountains, to have this ceremony called Wakaima. This particular ceremony was a kind of a calling of ancestors. I'm giving you a description of a painting that's in the gallery upstairs. And this particular ceremony was this kind of convergence of indigenous spirituality, African spirituality, various different African spirituality, and created this cosmogram. I mean, I don't want to get too far in it, but so many of the traditions use this kind of drawing of cornmeal and flour on the ground to kind of mark the location of where the ceremony is. And so that design in certain Yoruba, African communities is called a cosmogram, and certain indigenous communities, there's another name for it, but it's similar to a cosmogram. And so there's an adaptation of the symbols altogether in that. But anyway, this ceremony that happens, that was led by Cecile Fatima and Dedi Boukman, was a Hugon and a Mambo, ended up slaughtering a Creole pig and asked to be empowered. And the loa that kind of came to that particular ceremony was Urzeli Dantor, and imbued the Haitian peoples at that time. And that ceremony, for the most part, ends up being like kind of two things at the same time. It was like this kind of trigger that, you know, the Haitians were already in civil war or having their Haitian Revolution, but it also embodied the Haitian peoples to be able to kind of take up and fight off the French and the British and the Spanish to gain their independence. And it was like that ceremony was like kind of the fire that kind of just ignited the results of people that gained their independence and became the one and only free black people in this hemisphere that got rid of slavery on their own, by their own prowess. And even to this day, the Loa Urzeli Dantor is like the patron saint of Haiti. And this is like, for most part, from my understanding, from what I've read, not that I directly know, but am referencing that this is the birth of Haitian voodoo. And this is where Haitian voodoo becomes very specific to Haiti. But the painting that I brought up earlier with Noah and like the disembarkment of all of the animals, on the ground in that painting are these veves that I'm talking about. And so on here, this is Ogu, which is a ancient African, pardon? It's a metal artist. Reference, he's a blacksmith, as well as Urzeli here in the middle, and then Dambala and Ayawedo, who Dambala and Ayawedo are the loas of life and man, basically, in creation. And so anyway, so this is still a direct reference to the coming of the enslaved peoples, but the Bois Caïma is the actual ceremony that really kind of cements Haitian voodoo to be alive in Haiti. Does this answer your question? Do you want me to speak to more? It's like, I assume that you probably have like more that you would probably want to add to that. You're good. Yeah, okay.
All right, we're going to thank Chawne for this wonderful presentation. We all want to go to Waterloo.